welcome to the first in a series of what hopefully is going to be some helpful, informative live events. So I'm Andy Brooke,
I'm Dave Jones.
Or Diagnostic Dave as we call him. So I'm the MD of Maverick and this is a technical director. In case you don't know about Maverick, we've been going for
24 years.
24 years, wow, 25 years, ooh, yeah. Okay, so we've been involved with Pass-Thru for a very, very long time. So I think we started in 2007. We're involved with companies in the US who had been doing Pass-Thru since 2004. Yeah, well, where do we start with Pass-Thru? Let's start at the very beginning. It's been a bit of a letdown, let's say, for the last few years, hasn't it?
It's certainly not been everything that was promised or delivered, especially from the US.
So it was the big kind of, this is going to open up dealer diagnostics for very little money to the full aftermarket in the UK and Europe, the same as it has in the US. But I think, first of all, you kind of have to understand there's a huge market difference between the US and Europe. And I mean, central USA, your dealer might be 200 miles away, so they had to do something over there. Here it's obviously a little bit of a closer knit thing, isn't it?
Yeah, we've also got as well the Australian market now that have just been issued with the right to repair. So of course it's a big talking subject now over in Australia. Again, over there, they're probably where we were. I would say probably 10 years ago. So
at
again,
least, yeah. You're talking to the guys there, definitely.
Yeah. So the benefit, obviously, of Australia is they do have the history of the US and the UK and Europe that have gone through the best part of this. So at least they've got something on paper to work with.
Yeah. I mean, from our point of view, you've probably heard of all this stuff about block exemption, rights to repair, blah, blah, blah. This has got a little bit more difficult in the UK since the B word or Brexit. J2534, people seem to think that with J2534 or Pass-Thru, well, I'll tell you what, we'll start off by explaining a little bit more about what J2534 means.
Let's start with what a Pass-Thru device really is, really.
Reckon, yeah.
So really the Pass-Thru device, it's a device really that's just used to communicate with the vehicle, in the vehicle, and it's designed to act as a universal device to basically push program files into the vehicle. Mainly emissions files is what it started out as in the US in 2004. So that's basically what it was designed for, was to give those emissions updates such as engine control units and transmission control units the ability to keep the software current to fix some of those little software glitches. And
I guess it changes when you come to the UK and Europe, doesn't it? Massively?
It changes when it comes to the UK and Europe, and again, it's what I will say is it is manufacturer specific. So each manufacturer has a set of base guidelines that they have to adhere to, and to what level then the manufacturer takes that to is entirely up to them. So not all manufacturers will give you the ability to do diagnostics and coding and programming of all modules on the vehicle.
So on the J2534 side, J2534, just in case people don't know, it's just a protocol. It's just a type of technical information. It was introduced in 2004, and then we've had different types. We've got different J numbers. We've got all sorts of bits that go around since then. We've got J3534, 1 to 2. There's numbers of different ones, isn't there, to do with this? There's
yes, so you've got 1s and 2s, yes. You've got primarily 1s, which again, as I said, is emissions related, and 2 then kind of extends that to the other modules on the vehicle.
And then the manufacturers basically take that and decide what they want to give you after that.
That's correct, yeah.
So I mean, if we're going down to it, so we've got our device, we're quite happy, we're working away, and we know that let's just use an example that we've got a Land Rover that's come in, just leave something very British here, that needs, that the gearbox has got a fault in, and you've been told through using your technical information system that you've got to update the gearbox transmission ECU on it. So where do I go from there as a workshop?
So, well, first of all, obviously you're going to need a J2534 device, and there are plenty out there. There are...
So let's just say, for example, we go through some devices later, because we've got some devices here, we'll talk about devices. How do I then, as a workshop, just go, right, okay, I want to update this ECU. How do we do it?
Well, first of all, you're going to need an account with the OEM.
Okay,
That's the crucial thing.
I'm Dave's garage
Yeah.
down the road, and I'm going right. Okay, I've got an internet connection. I've got a laptop here. How do I create an account?
So you're going to need to start an account application process with the manufacturer that you're working on. For some manufacturers, you can get online and up and running fairly quickly. An account opening application can take a matter of minutes in some manufacturers. However, there are other manufacturers, be warned, that you do go through an account application process that can take several months. And those ones generally that take several months is generally because you're trying to, they're also wanting to give you access to their security related information. So that'll be things such as doing keys and keyless vehicle modules, body control modules, anything that holds kind of an anti-theft security element to it. Some manufacturers will make that as an additional application. Some manufacturers will charge an extra additional cost for that, and some manufacturers will actually build it into the actual initial account process. So again, be warned on that.
So we've actually done quite a few webinars about OEM registration, to be fair. So what we're really saying here is it's not the dream, because the dream that we were sold back in 2007 was that you basically plug a box in, click on the manufacturer's website, pay a tenner, and miraculously it updates the gearbox ECU.
And that's great. That's exactly the idea of how it should work, but you've got a lot of pre-account applications to go through. So if you're an all-makes workshop out there that are seeing 20 odd different vehicle manufacturers, you want to use the pass-through tool for 20 different vehicle manufacturers, you'll have to start some serious account applications going, and start them now before you actually want to start using the software.
So it's not an easy fix. It's not what was sold to us. It's never going to be that easy, is what we're saying.
No.
We've got to do it. So yeah, actually, if you have a look on our blogs on the website, if you go on www.maverickdiagnostics.com, on the actual website, there's blogs at the bottom. I write a lot of blogs. Dave writes a lot of blogs. We get a lot published through PMM and things like that. And I think we did a whole webinar with slides last year. It might be slightly out of date, about OEM registration per manufacturer. So if you're interested in a specific manufacturer, have a look at that, or have a look at the PDF. I'm just going to ask Laura, who's our marketing director, who's actually around the corner, just keeping an eye on us. Laura, is that on a PDF on there, on the website, so you can just download it, or?
I think so, yeah.
I think so. If not, we can put it up there. I think it's on YouTube anyway, that, isn't it? It's been broken down per manufacturer, so yeah, you can have a look at that. Okay, so, right, so specifically then, Dave, let's just try and run through this really quickly. What manufacturers are good to use pass-through with?
So there are a number of different manufacturers that you can get the most out of. In other words, I would say as close to using a dealership device with certain pass-through manufacturers. Jaguar Land Rover is a really good example.
On the older stuff, so pre-DOIP, which is pre-2017.
Yeah, so using the symptom-driven diagnostic software,
okay.
With a J2534 device, again, works great in that respect. There are other manufacturers as well, such as, again, Mercedes-Benz actually write a specific program for J2534.
They do, the Century pass-through, but we tried quite a few devices. If you remember, we used a certain device which we're not allowed to name from Germany because we had to send it back, but it didn't work. Yeah,
well, again, that takes into the discussion of approved devices.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Against J25 compliant devices or J2534 ready devices against approved devices. Always try, where possible, to stick to an approved device. Most vehicle manufacturers will list J2534 devices that they've physically received from suppliers and they've actually tested with their software. Oh, yeah. So, of course, two of the biggest, most well-known devices in the marketplace at the moment, and this is worldwide, this is not just UK and Europe, it would probably be the Actia XS2G,
which they no longer make,
which unfortunately
chip shortage,
which unfortunately is no longer available and being superseded. But still, the current device probably is the Drew Technologies Card Act Plus device.
Which, guess what, everyone? We just happen to have one here. So we sell a lot of these, and we've been selling them since the birth of pass-through. They've always been pretty much the market leader, haven't they?
Yeah, and the reason they've been the market leader is they were involved with writing the J2534 protocol in the US back in in the early 2000s.
Just in case you don't know who these guys are, so Drew Technologies is now part of Opus Group. For you guys who are UK based, and in fact around the world, you probably know this. This was they bought Autologic in the UK. They bought Drew Technologies, Drew Link, and quite a lot of other companies. Farsight
also in the US.
And all that. So they're real specialists in this. And this actual tool has been rebranded as, I think, Snap-on, Delphi,
Launch.
It's this actual box is the same thing. But I think you get a few launch devices which aren't this, or is that the Autel devices?
Launch do a version of that called the J box, which is basically it's red in colour. But again, there are some small slight differences, mainly with the internal firmware of the unit. So again, you need to make sure, because the firmware is quite a crucial, integral part of the unit.
So this is actually a 3, and I think they're going to launch a 4.
So there is a 4 already out there.
There's a 4 in the US. So going back to the manufacturers, really. So what we're saying is you've got to complete the manufacturer registration process anyway.
Yes.
You've then got to buy your time credits.
Yes.
So it gets quite. It's not the dream. Is it?
However, once you've done that once you've created your account and you're up and running, then really it's down to making sure that the software is downloaded and installed on the correct laptop or tablet that you want to use. So again, there are a lot of minimum specifications that the manufacturers will tell you that you need. There are a lot of additional background programs that need to be installed. So again, it's not as easy and simple as I've got a Bosch diagnostic tool and I want to install and use that tool for Pass-Thru, because the Bosch laptop may not necessarily be the right specification to run the dealer diagnostic tool.
So I guess it's because you need quite a lot of free hard drive space.
There's a lot of free hard drive space. They're quite demanding on the processor, and again, as I say, there's a lot of background programs as well.
So I know, for example, just to talk about, say, Volkswagen, how much files are on Volkswagen now? The tech team did tell me this the other day.
Currently at the moment, it's 150 gigabytes worth of data.
And then to reload that, you need double that, so you need 300 gig hard drive free space. Plus, I know with VAG Group, if you've got Volkswagen, Audi, you'd see it, Skoda on it, you've got to have exactly the correct PC to run it as well. It's because it becomes a nightmare. You can't really run multiple manufacturers on a laptop anymore.
That's the next big question and answer is, you've got obviously Jaguar Land Rover then installed on your machine. You then want to move into the area of either BMW or Mercedes or Volkswagen Audi or the other manufacturers that offer. Again, you cannot then start to install all of these bits of software on the same computer, because generally, as a rule, what happens is a lot of the drivers will end up clashing, or a lot of the programs such as Java, or some will want to use Internet Explorer as a web browser, some will want to use Chrome, some will want to use Edge. So there's a lot of programs there all fighting and jostling for position as to who's going to be the more dominant. And logically, of course, the vehicle manufacturers do not test their software with other vehicle manufacturers, because in a BMW dealership, they don't have Mercedes-Benz software installed. Exactly. They've got a BMW logo above the door. They're only concentrating and focusing on BMW. So
I guess the thing is, I mean, we have got to say, I mean, obviously going back this far, we've done it ourselves. We tested this to death. We used to sell, for example, a Panasonic CF54. It used to have multiple partition hard drives for different manufacturers to use with Pass-Thru. We stopped doing that, 5 years ago?
5 years ago, yeah. It's a great idea, and it was a great concept at the time when we were new and early into Pass-Thru. And again, great for cost savings. However, you learn, as with anything in life, you learn the hard way. If a hard drive fails, you've not just lost one vehicle manufacturer.
And the other point is, I mean, it takes now to update, say, the software for Volkswagen. It takes about 6 or 7 hours.
It can take 7 hours.
So you're not using that computer for any other brand while you're doing that, even if it did work properly.
That's correct.
So, yeah, that's right. That's why. I mean, that's pretty much what we do these days. We're a technical support team that updates people's laptops so they can use them straight away in the workshop every day.
Yeah, it's worth mentioning as well, obviously, that the software is constantly evolving and changing. You know, as are the cars. They're constantly adding new and improved features. So what works now? So you may be able to have BMW, Mercedes, and Volkswagen on the same computer if your hard drive's big enough at the moment. However, that's not necessarily going to be the case next week when you switch it on and Windows has done an update.
Yeah, because it could be a hardware change, a hardware key change, which we've had on Mercedes when it's in the Windows update, and it no longer recognises the software to use with the Mercedes software.
Yeah, there's just more to go wrong.
Yeah, I'll have lots to go wrong. So anyway, let's go back to the sort of more positive spin on this, really, which is, so let's look at that. I've decided that I want to become let's do something different. I want to become a Volkswagen specialist. I've got all my stuff, I've passed it, I've sent all my stuff in the UK to Milton Keynes, I've paid my money, I've got my little security token so I'm able to do absolutely everything. Then I get told that the cost of the VCI, which is currently, so this is the genuine VAS tool, let's say the VCI 6154A is £2,500. And I go, whoa! That's really expensive. I'm not doing them that much. I just want to be able to do them.
Yeah,
what's the advantage of using Pass-Thru?
Well, that is the great advantage of Pass-Thru is you've got one generic device there really that can use the J2534.
So I pick up my card app now, which I've been using for the Jaguar Land Rover on the different computers because I'm doing it right. I plug that in, and then what do I need to do to get that to work with my VAG software?
So you'll have some drivers that came with the Drew Technologies Card App Plus, or your choice of J2534 device that you've got. You'll install those drivers, and then generally it's just a couple of little setting changes inside the software as a one-off period. So you've done that the once, and you're up and running. And that's the benefit with these tools is that there will be a cross-platform, cross-manufacturer. You only invest once in the hardware.
So, right, basically then, so I've gone, well, why doesn't everybody do that then? Why hasn't everybody just got a pass-through tool in their workshop? Because why, in fact, do Maverick sell hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of OE tools and set them up every year if it was that easy?
One of the main reasons is due to, again, the protocol J2534 operates in a certain particular way that only allows communication with either one module at a time, or generically it's slower because of the way it connects and the way in which it works. So using a genuine dealer tool has its benefits because you're actually using the design tool with the designed brand, with the designed platform. And generally the most common thing that people experiment with is they see a decrease in speed when using pass-through, or a decrease in functionality, or a decrease in some of the things that don't work, i.e. detecting battery voltage accurately, or detecting ignition voltage. So of course the J2534 devices will not detect ignition voltage on any vehicle manufacturer.
And of course that's become critical now because every OEM now demands a battery support unit running around 14.7 volts.
Well, anywhere really between 13.8 up to 14.2, 14.7. Again, there is generally with those there is an upper limit and a lower limit. So again, the vehicle needs to see somewhere in between a window.
So this could be a problem. So if I then want to go programming on my Volkswagen kit, I'm going to have to manually detect the ignition on and off.
Yeah, correct. So again, with some of the processes that you would go through, such as reprogramming a module or updating a module, part of the process will ask you to switch ignition on and off. Whereas with the genuine tool, once you've done that, carried out that task on the vehicle, the software will naturally progress. Whereas with a pass-through tool, you will have to do a certain amount of other prompts.
And it's going to be a lot slower. So I'm now. Obviously, I'm paying by the hour to use their software. I'm paying Volkswagen by the hour, so it's going to cost me a lot more.
Yeah, and again, one of the other things you've got to bear in mind again is, as we said before, right at the very beginning, J2534 really was designed just to do emissions updating. So again, it's going to be OEM specific as to what the manufacturer is giving you access to do on the vehicles. So, for example, as a Renault, from a Renault perspective, they currently have 3 modules for an auto configuration, security gateway unlock, and a reprogramming module. So there's no diagnostic capability at all with J2534.
Okay, what about? So I mean, I've used it obviously on quite a lot of stuff. What about people like Toyota? pretty good, aren't they?
Yeah, so Toyota, again...
they let you do diagnostics.
So Toyota let you do diagnostics and let you do coding and programming. Again, the blogs that we've written and the articles that we've got will tell you there what vehicle manufacturers will let you do. So again, and with J2534, because it's emissions based, as a general rule, it won't go older than Euro 5 emissions.
Yeah.
So roughly round about 2009-10, when they brought in the Euro 5 emissions regulation. So trying to do vehicles that are older than that, you will not be able to do with a J25.
I think the example of that would be Mercedes Pass-Thru.
Yeah, that's a perfect example.
Yeah, because that would obviously only go back to Euro 5, I think. Mercedes Pass-Thru.
Euro 5 emission, Euro 5
so
engine ECU
then
control.
then you'll get something like a European ML 320, which has got the older Euro 4 engine in, even though it's a later car, or you've got a Sprinter van which has got an older engine in Euro 4, so it doesn't work with it.
Yeah.
And then you have to go for, say, a Mercedes Light kit, which is like a full Mercedes kit, or a Mercedes Kit 4, which is a lot of money, rather to be able to do those.
Mercedes-Benz Sprinter is a perfect example to that, because obviously, there are only certain particular models that will actually work with this entry pass-through kit.
Yeah.
So it's all dependent on the vehicle VIN number. You really need to check the vehicle VIN number.
I guess going back to the speed of it all as well. So what you mentioned before, I know that I used to do quite a bit with BMW and still do a bit with BMW actually myself, messing around. It takes forever to program a BMW.
Yes, a BMW with pass-through, if you, unlike most manufacturers, you're not updating just a single individual module, you're updating the entire vehicle. And in the early days of using the J2534 pass-through device on a BMW, I did a 5 Series E39 way back in 2008-9.
It's a real old one.
And it took somewhere in the region of 2 days.
Wow, that's like basically holding a light bulb and turning the house around for the light bulb, isn't it?
Yeah,
really painful.
It was. And it wasn't one of those processes, unfortunately, that you could start the job in an evening, go home, and come back the next morning it was done, because of course the software was also always asking you questions throughout, such as turn the ignition off, remove the key, etc. So you'd come in the following morning and you'd find you'd only got a quarter of the way through the vehicle because it wanted you to carry out a task.
Yeah, that's a bit of a bugger compared to the original tool, which I wouldn't say it flies through it, but it certainly does it a lot quicker than 2 days.
Certainly does a hell of a lot.
Yeah, I've done quite a bit with that, as I say. So I'm going to talk about. I've just got a bit of a list here going on. So, average setup price then for pass-through. We're going to have a bit of a chat about that. So, you've got to go through the standard process. We're going to assume that you're having one laptop, one manufacturer, and a pass-through device. So I guess you're looking at sort of, that's depending on what laptop. Our laptop starts at about £1,000, I think, so for a tough book.
Yeah, a decent spec laptop now running Windows 10.
And these are how much?
Those are typically in the region of about £1,500 to £1,800
okay,
roughly.
And then we've got some further options. So we've actually got something here which most people will recognise. This is actually called a Bosch MTS 6531, and most of you would have seen it painted green as a Bosch KTS 560-590. Other people would have seen it painted blue as a GM MDI.
Or grey.
As a Mercedes tool, for the Mercedes Light tool. Opel Vauxhall tool is grey as well.
Yeah.
And then we've got...
what's the Nissan, Renault, Mitsubishi tool.
So it's everything, this tool. So this is it. This actually MTS 651 is like the base tool, which is the pass-through version of this, which can be reflashed to use pass-through. So that's instead of buying a KTS, you can buy one of these. And we do sell these occasionally, don't we?
We do. I also sell them in red as well as the Ford
VCM3.
Yeah, and the Mazda device is also there in red as well.
So it's like basically they paint it a different colour. But I have to point out, this has got an entirely different main chip set to a KTS, so you can't use it as a KTS with the SI software. We have messed around, we have tried these things. I did actually work for Bosch, so we do kind of know quite a bit about the internal architecture of this thing. So That's another alternative, because that works very well with Mercedes Pass-Thru, I know for a fact.
Yeah, works very well with quite a lot of the manufacturers, because again it's built on the same architecture.
And then we've got the sort of more cost-effective one again, which is, so this is called a mongoose device. Now, a lot of people have heard of this. Now, this is a very specific mongoose device, also built by Opus DrewTech people. And we have them specifically per manufacturer, so I was going to get you to have a bit of a chat about that.
Yeah, so we've got them specifically for GM, General Motors, for Opel Vauxhall Group. We've got them for Ford. We've got them for Volkswagen Audi. We also have them for Toyota as well. There are others available on the market that are sold, but predominantly in the US, for the US market, because of some of the differences in software available.
Again, why would I buy a specific one over the Mongoose, the Cardac rather?
Again, if you're just wanting to limit yourself to the vehicle manufacturers you're working with, so if you're only, if you're new into the Ford market, or you happen to want a contract for Ford, but you can't justify the cost of a full, complete VCM3, then of course you've got the added advantage that you can start with an entry-level Mongoose Ford interface with the laptop software subscriptions, and you're up and running. So it's like a stepping stone. It's one foot in the shoe, into getting your journey on the dealer diagnostic route.
Yeah. So I mean, it's a. I never promise if it's going to be an easy subject, really, but the basic takeaway is you can get into it reasonably easily. It's not going to cost you the world. So these were how much again?
About £795.
So they're about £795. So laptop. So for about 1,500–1,700 quid, depending what spec you go for. I mean, everything we sell, by the way, we do go through the setup process with you. You have a laptop that arrives set up and working, and also we help you with your OEM registration process as well. So for about 1,500–1,700 quid, you can basically get in there and start to do some pass-through properly.
Yeah. There are. I mean, as I say, there are certain manufacturers you can be up and running literally by the end of the day. If you started in the morning, for example, Renault, you could be up and running, by the end of the day with 3 of their J25, 34 applications that they have and their time credits. Ford again is a nice, easy, simple one if you're not wanting to get involved with security. So there are a number of manufacturers that you can really start. Again, Jaguar Land Rover up and running by the end of the day if you don't want to do security.
So security is a real key to this.
Security is where it starts to be a lengthy process.
CME, block exemption, all the other bits that are currently happening in the market today, which is a huge headache for everybody. But at the moment, I mean, so if we're going through security for, say, Ford, how long would that take me now?
Well, again, it depends upon you receiving the applications from Ford Motor Company, filling them in accurately. Depends on various other bits of information that Ford will be checking. And again, it depends upon the staffing levels at Ford and how busy they are and how many applications they've received.
And I know that can take a little while. I know that probably the toughest one of all is Mercedes at the moment by a long way, and we have to hold people's hands through that, let's say, on a daily basis.
And this is the biggest difference, I think, between the European and UK market and the US market. So, of course, in the US market, they've got one centralised security, NASTF over there. However, it's more stringent with regards to getting hold of it, because it's really designed for locksmiths and such people that are going to be doing security on a regular basis. So, again, you've got to be on a particular register over there in the US. But once you've got it and you've applied for it, that then means that you've got it for all the vehicle manufacturers to that level.
Yeah. That's it. So you sort of got a ticket to ride. You just have that, and then you can go through and you can use any bits of pass-through.
And that's what we can hope and dream for here in the UK. Is we go through one centralised application, get approved once, and all the manufacturers adhere to.
I have to admit, I do work with that team, and UK AFCAR, and we're struggling a little bit. Europe's going to get there well before us because of the B word, as I mentioned at the beginning. We're not really going to get that passport to freedom. Unfortunately, quite yet, probably a couple of years, everybody. Okay, so I think we've pretty much covered the subject. As we said, per manufacturer, it's per case. The general thing I would say is pass-through. If you look at it, that you're competing against the main dealer. Whether you use pass-through or an OEM tool, it doesn't matter. You're competing in the way that it's taken by the vehicle manufacturers is you're trying to take food out of their mouths. So they want you to go through a stringent process. So they're not going to let anybody have this. They're not going to let anybody register for pass-through. So what I'd say is generally you need to have to be a good, clean business. You have to be ideally a VAT registered or limited company.
It helps with the process. It's not the be all and end all. You just have to submit additional documentation evidence that you operate in the repair of motor vehicles. But again, it's all about the length of time for application and installing it. If you're a nice, clean, limited company, etc., you've been trading for a number of years, then the application process generally goes that little bit smoother and a little bit quicker.
Yeah. Okay. Now I'm just going to go over to Laura for a second. See, have we had any questions?
No questions, guys.
No questions. Okay, that'll take it a bit.
I think one of the biggest questions at the moment is should I get involved with pass-through?
Yeah. Well,
that's the biggest. Yeah. Should I really get involved with pass-through?
Good question.
And we can't really sit here at the moment and say yes or no. It really is dependent upon the type of business that you are operating in. It's certainly going to be an advantage to every business if you can get involved with pass-through.
And I guess it depends on your business model as well. I mean, if you've got to charge for these services, and it also retains your customers, so you're not having to drag that Land Rover down the road to the local Jaguar Land Rover specialist to update it. You're just able to do it yourself.
You're able to update it yourself, keep the vehicle in-house, finish that job. You know that you've started with your generic aftermarket tools. You know the software weakness on the vehicle. It keeps the job in-house. Gives you that ability then to be able to complete that job and hand it back to the customer with the knowledge that you've done the job accurately, correctly.
And we know that aftermarket tools, however good they are just starting to drop off because, I mean, basically the manufacturers have put everything onto the cloud. Everything has to be reverse engineered these days. They can't just take the software like some manufacturers used to do in the years previous. And I think basically we've just got to, help people as much as we can to get the best out of these sort of tools.
Yeah. So we've just got some advantages here of the pass-through system. Generally, again, you can have a lot of technical information on a vehicle as well through its vehicle chassis number, because again, with that system, you've also got access to the vehicle manufacturer portals because you've just registered. Every vehicle manufacturer has to give you technical information and technical documentation in the form of wiring diagrams, repair manuals, technical service bulletins, recalls. It's all available once you have your account online. So that's something else as a benefit that you would get that you generally wouldn't, and pass-through generally triggers that because you've got to make that application process with the OEM. Yeah.
So what you're saying is it does have a lot of information. It's not just about programming.
It's not just about diagnostics and programming. Again, it opens up that web portal to give you that technical information as well.
And some of these you have to pay for, but I guess,
Yeah, most manufacturers you will have to pay for some form of technical documentation subscription. But that can be fairly inexpensive when you want an accurate wiring diagram for a specific make, model, year and VIN number, which can be quite difficult to obtain using third-party bits of software. With the OEM, you're getting the right piece of information that you want.
Cool. Okay. Right. If any questions come about this later, we're going to save this, and I believe we're just going to make it available on YouTube or whatever else, aren't we? Okay. Thanks, everybody. Thank you very much for your time, and we'll be back. Oh yes, I've got. Laura's about to tell me what the next ones are about because I can't remember now.
Well, I think the idea is we want to throw it open to our people watching and people who are listening to our Facebook Live at the moment. You let us know what you'd like us to discuss.
Yeah, what specifically within the realms of OEM tooling and software.
Yeah.
We're going to run a special with a female focus. Talking about women in the automotive aftermarket industry, and we're hopefully going to have someone in.
We've got some guests and everything. This is cool, isn't it? Okay.
What it's like
didn't know this.
And battery support believe it or not, there's some interesting news on that.
Battery support units.
Okay, that's cool.
Oh,
Yeah,
we've got a question from Daniel.
Oh, question from Daniel. Here we go.
In Italy, there is a very few workshops which are using Pass-Thru,
Yeah.
and I don't see any future uprising in that number. Is there a future in Pass-Thru?
Yes.
I worked in Italy. Hi, Daniel. I worked in Italy for quite a while. I worked for a company called Technotest in Solvaganza, and I worked in the Pass-Thru projects. So I know a little bit about Italian Pass-Thru. I also worked with Texa, the good old-fashioned Italian brand, that one as well. Texa really tried with it. I think the problem you've got is in Italy and as well as across Europe, you've got to get CERMI in place. They've got to get these trust centres in place in order for you guys, like they do in America, to register really easily. Now, this is happening in Germany already. It's happening in other countries across Europe. CERMI will be implemented. That means, like, once you've registered, once you're approved, a lot of garages can then just pick up their Texa device, or, well, they wouldn't have an old Technotest device, I wouldn't have thought these days. But you pick up those devices and you'd be able to use them for Pass-Thru.
Clarification from Daniel. What I mean, will the manufacturers keep up this Pass-Thru for a long time?
Okay, that's another question. Okay, yes, they have to, is the answer. It's part of the legislation. It's part of 898 block exemption that they have to give you the right to repair, and they have to actually put the Pass-Thru within that software. Now, this is where we were going with this before. It is a bit difficult because some manufacturers kind of accidentally forget to put the Pass-Thru stuff in there, and we have to, through various bodies, remind them that they need to make that compliant.
Yes, it's a legal requirement for manufacturers to give you the right to repair these vehicles, the technical information that you need, but also as well, again, the ability to be able to do, as I said to you at the beginning, the bare minimum is the ability to be able to do software updating on emissions-related ECUs. Again, more and more manufacturers will have extended that to other modules on the car because it's a revenue stream for them, Daniel.
That's it. Yeah, it's a revenue stream. And a very interesting comment was made in Brussels. A friend of mine works out there, works on this side of it, and said to me that he's he said Mercedes have realised that they make billions of euros out of this, so they're going to be pushing it as much as possible. I'm just reading one from Ian, actually. You just see it on my screen now. Yeah, we've already got access for independent operators and full access. Yes, and lost keys and SCN. That's what we do. So basically, the question, how can I read the question? I'm not used to this. Ian Miles says, Mercedes-Benz access for independent operators, will they get full access, lock keys, full and SCN coding? We've just answered that. Yes, we do. We do it every day.
It's on the B2B portal right now at the moment, Ian, that as of August 2023, they are going to be giving you access to do the keys.
Absolutely. So we deal with, we're part of the Automotive Locksmiths Association. We're very involved with this side of it. The biggest problem we've got with lost keys at the moment is that some dealers are not playing ball. From what we can understand, they don't want to supply keys. We've got a couple of big examples of huge locksmith groups throughout the UK who, the dealers, despite the fact that these guys have got full SCN access for lost key. And what's the other thing? The FASIT, isn't it?
DAS 4 is a big topic of conversation at the moment, you know, when it comes to keys and lost keys scenario. There is a process in place by Mercedes-Benz, but again, most of the dealers and most of the people that you'll speak to or email don't know that process is there. So again, you find it's very sporadic at the moment. Yeah. It's we do know of independents that do have access currently at the moment, although we do also know there are several people that we've worked with that have attempted to try to get access and just cannot get the access that's required.
So, I mean, it's one of those, it's a subject you have to speak to us direct. Once you've done your application, we can kind of go through this with you. As I say, with the locksmith side of it, it's been very tough for some of the locksmiths to get it. And Mercedes have been saying things like, oh, you haven't got a premises, or we need to look at a police check, or we need, we've gone through all of that, haven't we?
CERMI's really going to be the answer to this.
Yeah, CERMI's still the answer. But as I say, I'm on that team, and it's... And I've just read from Daniel again. It's a right to repair we have to defend in the future. Absolutely, Daniel. Absolutely. I'm working very hard towards that. Unfortunately, in the UK, can I put it nicely, the government have kind of parked it as not their problem. And we're trying to very much make it through the IAAF and UK AFCAR very much their problem. And say to them, we're going to use billions in revenue, you're pushing the aftermarket out of the way, blah, blah, blah. So, yeah. It's a huge thing.
Yeah, we have seen some changes, obviously, since Brexit. You know, we've again, we'll go back to the Renault scenario. Again, the registration process now, it sees that you're actually UK and actually doesn't recognise your VAT number anymore, because a lot of the vehicle manufacturers use a European VAT database, and suddenly, all of a sudden, overnight, the UK VAT numbers got removed.
Yeah, they didn't really care about. I think BMW had the same.
BMW had the same thing. There are a few manufacturers that put some workarounds in place, but in the main, there are still manufacturers there that use this European VAT checker as a validation, and of course, it doesn't work for the UK VAT numbers now. Also, as well, it won't work with the EORI numbers that a lot of people were issued with as well. So again, in the main, if you want to get involved with Renault, unfortunately, it's additional email. Renault know the situation with UK applications. They know what the fix is at their end. However, they still need us to email, or yourselves to email Renault to actually make that fix. It's a nice, easy, simple fix from Renault. They know what to do. They just don't do it automatically.
And from the sort of perspective is when we have these complaints, it is actually worth, you know, for example, we have customers saying, we can't get our registration through, we can't do this for this reason, that reason. If it's a legitimate reason, we can put you in touch with the IAAF, and more to the point, really, probably Neil Pattermore from UK AFCAR, who can say, wow, they're trying to block your application, let's see what we can do for you. But we do have cases, we have quite a few of them. We had one the other week where the guy said, Mercedes is blocking my application. And we actually looked into it as a case. In fact, he was using 2 different names of 2 different businesses and different addresses. And Mercedes had looked at him and said, this is really dodgy, we're not going to have you on our books. You know, things like that. So it is, yeah, it's not easy, but, you know, we're here to help you anyway. So any more questions, Laura?
That's it for now.
Okay, right. Thank you, everybody, for the time. We're going to run another one, as I said. And if you have any suggestions, if you just want to drop it into our messaging, not just on this, but our general messaging, or if you actually want to contact us, the email address is really easy. It's just sales@maverickdiagnostics.com. And as I say, have a look on our website at the blogs, because there's usually loads there, and there's usually links to other blogs and other things like PMM magazine, Auto Technician magazine, etc.
We even have an access on there as well for you to download the latest versions of software
once you're registered.
So we do like to put the majority of vehicle software that's available from the manufacturers in one place on our website. So again, please feel free to use that free resource that we have there.
Right, thanks, Dave. Right, thanks everybody for listening.
Thank
Cheers.
you. Bye-bye, Facebook.